This is On Assignment. Hello again, everyone. I'm Imran Siddiqui. Alex Villarreal is off this week. In this episode, we go to India to see how one company is taking tourists into the slums of Mumbai. Here in the States, there's another inner-city project, this one using vacant lots as a place to grow food. In Russia, a new legal effort to restrict the activities of gay people. And in Washington, President Obama stands with South Korea against its neighbor to the north. Bringing you the stories behind the stories at VOA, this is On Assignment. Mumbai, the financial hub of India, is also home to one of the world's largest slums. It's called Dharavi. It's a bustling industrial center where many things are made, but many residents live below the poverty line. Life can be hard in Dharavi, but one tour company is bringing visitors and money to the slum. VOA correspondent Arup Pandey took a tour and spoke with Alex Villarreal about it. Let's check it out.
With 1 million people crammed into less than 3 square kilometers, Dharavi is one of the world's most densely populated slums. One organization gives outsiders a glimpse of life inside this bustling Mumbai neighborhood through walking tours aimed at dispelling negative stereotypes of slum life. Reality Tours and Travel CEO Stephanie Hayes says visitors are surprised at what they see.
That's what people don't understand. There's hospitals, there's schools, there's businesses, there's industry, there's everything in here. And I think people are shocked by that. They're shocked by there's major streets running through. I think for me, the industry is kind of what sets Dharavi apart.
A lot of times the stigma associated with slums and people who live in slums, I was so astounded just in my experience walking through of the amount of labor that is going on. I mean, these people are building things, making things that not only are used here in India, but all over the world. And I think that's what opens the eyes of so many people who go through these slums, and whether as a tourist or as someone who lives in Mumbai, I don't think they're aware of how much entrepreneurship is going on. And I think that's what I was really surprised about. I mentioned it in my story, $650 million a year. That's a great deal of money that is coming from this one area of the city. And we have people they're taking everything that is thrown away, plastic toys, broken toys, bottles, everything. And anything that you would throw away normally, they have a use for it there.
I know that this film, Slumdog Millionaire, that became so popular. How accurate do you think those kinds of portrayals are as compared to what you saw yourself?
Oscar-winning, great story, but I think when you talk to some people in India in particular, and they don't have to be living in slum, even some of the middle and upper class, I think they weren't too happy with the way the movie portrayed slum life, and also they thought it was kind of indicative of that, someone who's never been to India or never seen it or visited it would have this image of what India is like, and even what slum life is like. So I think you have to see the good and the bad. I mean, yes, there is a lack of basic infrastructure. There is poverty. But at the same time, you don't want people to take away that as the only image of India and just the only image of slum life. I mean, these are people who live there. They've lived there for generations. This is their home. What I was really surprised by doing this story is that when I was trying to get to Dharavi, I was really, really surprised by the number of Indians and the number of Mumbai residents who've never even visited Dharavi. And when I told them I went there, they were astounded.
Let's talk now about these children that you covered. Do you have any idea what percentage of children in slums are actually attending school?
India recently passed in 2010 a Right to Education Act, which guarantees free compulsory education for everyone up to the age of 14. And so they do actually have, the government says they do have 86 or 90% enrollment rates among children. It's a really high percentage. But the issue is, do they stay in school? Number one, they might go to primary school, but they don't make it past 5th or 6th grade or even middle school and forget about high school.
In just 1 year, a group of 15 volunteers has transformed this public park in Mumbai into a makeshift school where some 250 children from local neighborhoods and slums come to enhance their learning.
Very good.
Two Mumbai residents started Angels Express Foundation in 2012 after finding that many of the city's more than 4 million school children still lack basic English and math skills. In fact, despite high enrollment levels of primary school children, a recent nationwide study found that only half of those enrolled in the 5th grade could solve simple subtraction problems.
What struck you seeing these kids in that environment?
Honestly, what struck me, and I've been to many different schools, obviously in the US and in India, what struck me is how eager these children are to learn. I think many people all over the world, many children take for granted the fact that they get to be in school and they get an education, a good education. I think these kids really understand the value of it.
VOA's New Delhi correspondent Arup Pandey. We're taking a break now, but when we come back, another story from the inner city as we find out about how empty lots are being used to grow food. You're watching On Assignment. It is estimated that about 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities by 2030, and feeding the world's urban dwellers is a mounting challenge. Experts say cities must grow more of their food wherever they can. In Baltimore, Maryland, they're doing just that. Urban blight is being transformed into a source of healthy green food, and VOA's Steve Baragona joins me right now to talk about it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks.
Tell me something. You went down to inner Baltimore, which is like a place for crime, and a lot of stuff is going on over there. What did you find out?
It was super interesting. I found out about this just from talking to officials with the city planning department who were talking about leasing out some city-owned land to farmers. Now, not little, a lot of this, urban agriculture has become very popular these days, but a lot of it is small neighborhood gardens, community organizations, volunteer stuff. This was actually going to be a business that was going to try to make a profit, in addition to having these kind of social benefits, but they needed to make money in order to make this work. So I decided I'd go and check it out and see what it looked like. And I was really pretty amazed when they drove me to this site. We're driving past just block after block of just vacant buildings. And this is what, big chunks of Baltimore have become now that they've lost their steel industry and their port has shrunk and they've lost a lot of businesses, and it's kind of left the city hollowed out. So they're trying to make the best of what they can with one thing that they have lots of, and that's abandoned land.
Okay, so why don't we check the report and then come back. Let's roll it.
Baltimore has lost about 1/3 of its population since its post-World War II peak, leaving hollowed-out neighborhoods of boarded-up buildings and abandoned lots. But in the middle of this post-industrial wasteland, one of those lots is getting a makeover.
It was a high-crime area. This vacant lot was a haven for drug activity, but not anymore.
Farm manager William Long is from this neighborhood. He works for Big City Farms. The company was the first to sign a lease to grow food on abandoned land owned by the city. Alex Percival is its president.
We can really create jobs in the city in an industry that doesn't exist. So that's the whole meaning behind here. One, having good food. Two, having good jobs. And all these lots that are just trash heaps right now.
Turning trash heaps into fresh food treasure troves makes a lot of sense for a city with 17,000 empty lots and 10% unemployment. Baltimore hopes to lease about 8 hectares of vacant land to urban farmers in the next 5 years, says the planning department's Abby Koch.
Decreasing the burden on us for caring for vacant property. Employing more citizens, revitalizing the local economy, drawing people into the city. I know of a few people who've moved to Baltimore to be part of the urban farming movement in Baltimore. It hits a ton of our goals.
Farming in the city hits one of Percival's main goals, too. While most produce is shipped in from across the country, Big City Farms grows its greens within 15 kilometers of the customer.
So I'm cutting it now. It's getting in your plate within 24 hours. And there's a big difference between something was cut a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Something was cut just a couple hours ago.
That ultra-fresh flavor is great for chefs like Timothy Dyson at Bluegrass Tavern.
I had the opportunity to serve carrots that were pulled from the ground less than 2 hours ago. The flavors really pop.
Percival has shown he can grow fresh food just about anywhere. Big City's first farm sprouted on a strip of asphalt.
It's been a parking lot for, I guess, about 3 years now, but this used to be the city garage behind us.
Just a few inches of compost and a plastic liner separate the greens from the blacktop. But Big City Farms is all about growth in unexpected places. That includes its employees. Farm manager William Long spent time in prison on drug possession charges.
This community itself needs a change for the better. And me being an ex-offender myself, if they see that I can do it, maybe they would want to make a change as well.
A fresh outlook and ultra-fresh greens are changes Big City Farms hopes to bring to cities across the country.
And we're back with Steve Baragona. These urban greenhouses, they seem to be working.
It's pretty impressive. I have to say, they're growing in about this much compost on the bottom of these greenhouses. I mean, the idea is that you can pretty much grow good, healthy food anywhere.
So it's like what? You pick up some seeds and you just dump them and things start to grow?
They plant them really intensively. They actually plant them more densely than you would out in a regular field because they're growing in this very controlled environment.
Okay. So something that caught my attention was the restaurants are planning to pick fresh produce from these greenhouses. How does that work?
Yeah, you can get this stuff, you know, like they're saying, within hours of it coming out of the ground. And so it's just super, super fresh. And this is one of the things, I mean, most of the food that comes to us in where we are in Washington, D.C., most of our produce is shipped to us from across the country in California or, you know, in the other direction down in Florida. So it's been on a truck for a week, maybe, and it loses some flavor. And the food is basically designed to be shipped. It's not designed to taste great. So the chefs are really excited about this kind of thing, that you can get really, really fresh food that you couldn't get from the supermarket. And it's got more flavor. They say it's got more of its nutrition still in it because it hasn't had time to decay. And it just, you know, the chefs just go crazy for this stuff.
What was your feeling talking to people on the ground? Do you think it's something that you know, you'll see more of in Baltimore and maybe other states would want to pick that up?
Yeah, this was really interesting because there were a number of different angles that the company was going for. They were working on using this abandoned land. They were hiring ex-convicts who don't have a lot of job opportunities. So it has that kind of social benefit. What's missing right now is the profit. The way that they're describing it now is once they get up to size, full size, that the greenhouse that we saw in that abandoned lot was the first of what's going to be, you know, a much bigger project. And they say once that gets off the ground, then they should be profitable. And once it's profitable, then they say they are going to expand to other places in Baltimore and also other cities because there's a huge demand for this kind of thing now. People want this kind of fresh, locally grown produce. And so the potential is there. We'll see if it's profitable. I mean, these guys are really starting something new. So, you know, if it works, fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Steve Baragona. We're taking a break now. Coming up, Russia takes aim at what it is calling gay propaganda. You're watching On Assignment. In April, France became the 9th country in Europe to legalize gay marriage, but in Russia, opposition to homosexuality remains high, and activists say pending legislation could do more to keep gay people out of the mainstream. VOA Moscow correspondent Jim Brook has been following the story and spoke about it with On Assignment's Philip Alexio.
James, where does the country stand when it comes to gay rights and the tolerance in Russia compared to, say, European countries?
Russia really stands in isolation as an island that is going against the trend. We've seen that gay marriage has become very popular in Western Europe. France just approved the law. Britain's approving the law. Russia stands in total opposition to this, at least the government does.
Well, what is the government saying about it?
We've had some small regional laws against what's called gay propaganda.
When a gay group held a film festival in Moscow in April, there were the usual anti-gay protesters. But this time, there was an unexpected visitor. The policeman checking IDs may be a taste of the future. Despite protests last winter, Russia's Duma gave near unanimous approval to a vaguely worded bill that would ban homosexual propaganda accessible to minors.
And this month, the Duma, which is the parliament of Russia, will be approving a law that bans gay propaganda on the national level, from Kaliningrad all the way over to Vladivostok. What is gay propaganda? This could be books, this could be films, this could be talk shows, anything that discusses gay issues that is accessible to kids 16 and under, which basically means you can't discuss gay issues on TV, for example.
Manny Daguerre, a long-term British resident of Russia, helped organize the Gay Film Festival.
So the impact of the law is that it creates fear in society. It gives the green light to orthodox activists, to nationalists, that it's okay to beat up lesbian and gay people, that it's okay to discriminate against them.
This bill, now, does this violate any international standards in any way?
President Putin is expected to sign it into law next month in June. Yeah, I would say that it violates international human rights accords, and it's very offensive to people in Europe.
Russia increasingly stands apart from Europe, where gay marriage is spreading fast. Last month, Russian President Vladimir Putin faced gay protesters when he visited Holland. Back in Moscow, Mr. Putin was defiant when asked about European criticism of Russia's stance.
How can they demand that we introduce their standards? Or maybe we should demand that they instill our standards in that country. Let's not demand anything from each other. Let's treat each other with respect.
In Western Europe, Russia's official attitude is highly unpopular.
Well, where is this attitude coming from?
Russian attitudes are basically where American and Western European attitudes were 20 years ago. The difference is there really isn't free-flowing debate on television or, in schools or wherever. The issue is not discussed openly, so attitudes are kind of frozen I'll go back 40 years, the 1970s, here in Russia.
Mr. Putin's conservatism is backed by a recent Levada poll. 2/3 of respondents back laws banning gay propaganda. Over at the offices of Young Guard, a Kremlin support group, Ekaterina Senyakina gives voice to mainstream Russians' distaste for homosexuality.
We have traditional religions in which family values are among the most important of all. That's why our country, our state, is not ready for this kind of manifestation, gay parades on main squares.
Now, if you can't discuss these issues in public, for example, on a television talk show, it's very hard for the gay community really to shift attitudes towards gays in Russia today.
VOA Moscow correspondent James Brooke. Jim says Russia's propaganda legislation seems designed to keep gays in the closet for years to come. Moving on, President Obama and South Korean President Park Geun-hye met recently here in Washington and called on North Korea to stop making threats and to rid the peninsula of nuclear weapons. VOA's Ken Klein talked about it with Alex Villarreal. Let's start with some of Ken's report.
Recent weeks, North Korea has threatened to attack South Korea, the United States, and other U.S. allies in Asia to retaliate against stepped-up sanctions following a nuclear test earlier this year. Mr. Obama said the United States and South Korea are fully capable of defending themselves. President Park said if North Korea engages in future provocations, Seoul would make it pay.
So, Ken, North Korea's threats have been easing lately, but are we out of the danger zone?
Well, it's hard to tell because even the most experts on North Korea really have no idea what Kim Jong-un is thinking or what his government is planning or what's on their mind because it's such a closed society. But that seems to be the consensus at the moment, that North Korea, after that round of provocations, of threats, had to back down a bit. They had to find a way to ease off the threats and then allow, save some face and allow some room for some sort of diplomacy.
Now, President Obama has repeatedly said that the U.S. is prepared to use its full range of capabilities to defend itself and its allies against North Korea's threats. What does that really mean?
That's the classic all options are on the table strategy. And what the president means by that is that if North Korea is going to threaten things like a nuclear attack on the United States, which all intelligence that we know about shows they're really not capable of yet. They don't have a missile that can deliver that far. But if they're going to make outlandish threats like that, and threats against South Korea, and threats against the general stability in Northeast Asia, then the United States and its allies will be prepared to react with whatever means necessary. Although it's interesting, it almost seems that folks here in Washington are a little more concerned about this than people in Seoul, because they've been dealing with these threats for 60 years.
Now, if South Korea and the United States could have their ideal scenario, their ideal world in dealing with North Korea, what do you think they would want to see happen?
Denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. That's the main thing they want is for North Korea to somehow give up its nuclear program and to work with the allies, the U.S., South Korea, China, Japan, Russia, to find a way toward prosperity and toward feeding its people and being a more stable government that doesn't have to resort to these kinds of threats to get money to feed itself.
Now, in watching President Obama and President Park together, was there anything in particular that struck you about their comments?
I don't think there was anything particularly surprising, but I think, again, the whole purpose of it was to not only help the relatively new leader, the new president of South Korea, establish that that she does have the 100% support of the United States and its allies and other countries in this matter, but that President Obama is not standing alone, and that the United States is not standing alone either in saying this. So it was all about the solidarity.
If the tensions were to continue, or if they were to escalate again, what's at stake, not only for the United States, not only for South Korea, but for the world?
Well, certainly stability on the Korean Peninsula and and in Northeast Asia as well. What's at stake for South Korea and for China possibly would be the possibility of a huge flood of refugees. That's why China really bears watching in this, and both President Obama and President Park talked about the importance of China's role as perhaps the only country that North Korea listens to. As a bit of an ally of North Korea in trying to ratchet down these tensions and trying to not only put an end to this whole episode, but to try to prevent any future episodes of this kind.
VOA correspondent Ken Klein taking an inside look at the two Koreas. Well, we've come to the end of our show, but before we go, I want to mention that you can get VOA News anytime on your mobile device through Google Currents. And to get it, just check out voanews.com/currents. Alex Villarreal returns next week when we'll have stories about South Africa's growing middle class and efforts to create world's first human-powered helicopter. You don't want to miss that one. And from all of us here at On Assignment, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next week.